What's up, Wanna Coffee fam? It's Kai, and we are back. We will have weekly contributions from strangers all over the world discussing various topics chosen by yours truly. And this is the first time these contributors have spoken to one another, so you are in for a real treat. Without further ado, here's Ethan and Nikkita with Does Marriage Matter?
Hello, everyone. My name's Ethan, and I've got here with me.
Nikkita, how are you?
I'm good. Good to hear from you again. Today's topic is, does marriage still matter? I believe.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
I would, I guess, first start. It kind of depends on sort of who we're talking about, right? Like when you're asking, does marriage still matter? But to whom? Um, I guess we
Mhm.
can start with like to ourselves first, and then if it matters, like to society, to the world, to sort of like, I don't know, to those in religion who have their own definition of marriage. How about we start with you? Are you currently married?
No, I am not. I
Okay.
I am in a long-term relationship and I've been in that for some time. It's just one of those things where we talked about getting married and we've always it's not if we get married, it's when. It's just
Right.
when it's right. When I say right, I mean like, it's not a pandemic or
Right. Yeah.
financially it's
Yeah.
sound, it's something that, so it's just one of those things. And then there are things that I guess we're doing as individuals that we are pursuing. So it's like I said, it's just a matter of the timing. But I definitely do believe in marriage or I guess the idea of it still was it still important or relevant? For me, I guess I've known people who have gotten married and stayed
Mhm.
married for years and years. I've known people who have gotten divorced and it didn't work out. So I guess for me, I'm not in a space where I'm jaded by
Right.
marriage. Like
Totally.
I'm not like, oh, marriage never works.
Marriage. Ugh.
Everyone fails. It fails. It always fails. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't have that belief in marriage because I've seen it successful, and I just think that for me, I think marriage is an individual thing and sometimes it works and sometimes, things happen that it doesn't work out and that's okay. But I'm not jaded by the idea of marriage. What about
So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I actually wanted to. So I'm definitely not married. Um,
you? Okay.
Still single. So the no relationship to give me context for that. But you also brought up, it's kind of hard to not include the factor of we're still sort of like in this pandemic, and like I know
Yes.
some people who got married. I know both sides. So the people who got married because of the pandemic for various reasons, and then the people who were sort of on the track to getting married and had to put a huge pause on that because of the pandemic. Uh, but it's great that you bring up like this whole thing of getting married for the right reasons, like individual personal reasons, and not because of, for instance, like you said, the pandemic or money or timing or all of that stuff. I'm curious though, for you, I don't know your family background, for instance, or your upbringing. Is marriage for you like wholly personal? Is it also like a lot of social contract? Is there any religious attachment to that for you?
Um, hmm. I would say my upbringing, I'm sure my mother was like, get married in the church.
Hmm. Hmm.
That type of thing. But you know how you have family, they say, do as I say, not as I do. But they'll say,
Hmm.
oh, you need to be married and da 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 da, and don't do this
Hmm.
before marriage and this, that, and other. Don't, but then it's like I was at my parents' wedding. I don't know if that tells anything. I
Oh
was
wow, how
there. I
old were
was
you?
there. I was about 3. So
Okay, okay.
I was there, I context, I am adopted, but at the same time, it's like I still was there, I was physically at their, they'd been together since before I was born.
Right. Right.
But when I got adopted into the family, it was, helpful for them to be married. Not that I'm the reason they got married, but I was a little bit of the reason that they went ahead and just pushed it forward. But yeah, so I mean, I remembered living with my parents and they weren't married. So I was there and I remember my life before. It wasn't that I got a ton of context in terms of memory from previous, but yeah. So, and then I've, remember my brothers and other family members, and they've had, relationships, or, siblings, they've had relationships, and I've seen them all from the beginning, the courtship, the marriage, the after the marriage, and all that in between. So I think for me, marriage is still something that you aspire to, but I don't think I was conditioned to
Right.
have to get married. But don't live, my grandmother and them, as they say, live in sin for all your days. So, sometimes some conversations you just don't have with certain people in your
Right.
family
So
because you
so
already know their views.
so that's really interesting that you have that memory of like a small sliver, a slice of life from your parents before they got married, and then after. Do you remember much from the ceremony? Like, was it?
Yeah, I
Did you
remember
know what
because
was happening like at the
I
time?
did. I did. I knew they were getting married because everyone had told me. I was a part of the big day. They didn't have, because it was like we had it at the house, and my parents, they didn't have we didn't have any music. So my mom, I had this little toy radio, and I could wind it up, and my mom was like, okay, you're the music. So I was the music in that regard. So that's why I remember, because I had a role like, and
That's
I had a
great.
little toy piano and I was banging on it. So I probably sounded all kinds of awful, but my little radio played Somewhere Over the Rainbow without
Oh,
the
that's great.
words. Yeah. So I was a part of it. So that's how I remember it
You
so well.
probably brought down the house. I mean,
Oh
a
yeah.
year old playing their
I
parents'
was like, yeah,
wedding music.
I'm
I mean, come
forever.
on.
Who got married? And we just remember the music selection. That's all.
Right, exactly. Just the the
The
3-year-old.
musical artist that day, the entertainment. That's what we remember. And again,
And it's great you bring up like your grandmother, and how like that's just one more facet of like one point of context or pressure or influence on like what marriage is supposed to be, right? Or at least for me, I would say I'm 35, and growing up, in the 90s, the idea of, I think in the early then, the idea of marriage is definitely much more concrete. It's much more like definitive, and at least for my family, the pressure wasn't so much of like necessarily like uh, context or attachment to sin or religion, so much to speak, but certainly in my family, marriage is tied to, you got to have kids. You got to have kids, right?
mhm.
The pressure of, especially, like my parents wanting, you know, uh, the, the, the follow of lineage, so to speak. Um, but I mean, I think now that I've got four siblings, two older, two younger, and the two older ones have kids of their own, so there's much less pressure for me now to have to get married, to have kids, because my parents, they have their grandchildren now, so that's fine.
Yes.
So
Thankful. I'm shout out to my siblings for doing that. So it takes a lot of pressure off. And then
right,
now my nieces and nephews are old enough to have kids of their own. So there's plenty of
right,
great
exactly,
grands. No one's thinking about, oh well, such and such hasn't had. Oh, don't worry about me.
right,
Don't worry. Focus on those new ones. You got a new one on the way, right?
yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's not, yeah, there's definitely, at least just in my family, it's not so much social or religion. It's definitely like internal, but it's the pressure is very much off now that my siblings have, so now that I have nieces and nephews, and I cannot, there's, no hounding or anything like that.
Mhm.
But people outside of our situations, there's always that, I think, at least just in America, I can't speak for other countries or cultures, but we have a pretty, I'd say, still pressure uh, pressured perspective on marriage. Oh, you guys have been together for how long? You're not married? or you guys are married but don't have children, or like when are you gonna have children? When are you gonna have children? When are you guys gonna get married? Where are you gonna get married? Like having to save the money for the ceremony, like where and when and the date, and how many people you're inviting, and it's definitely also the stigma, I'd say, still of like, oh God, they're divorced, they failed.
Right.
But I think certainly people are starting to realize like we should, we can stop attaching this idea of failure or tangents of failure to divorce. Sometimes people need to be divorced. Like people think people get married for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and people become unhappy, and they need to be divorced so that they can be happy for themselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. Trying to not get into too much of a tangent here for me, but I think it, like you said earlier, I think it just boils down to if marriage matters to you personally, I think that's what matters. But I hope that we as a society can just get away from this like societal pressure, religious pressure of what marriage is.
I agree, because the pressure, I think, and I don't have the statistical data, but I feel like people are waiting longer to get married, because it was before, it was like, the 70s or 80s, or straight out of high school, go and get married. Then it was like, oh, go to college, 90s, 2000s, like go to college, and right after college, get married. And I didn't do any of those. Yeah, get all that. And then, now, all my friends who did that, they're all like, oh, little Johnny's going off this first year of college. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Yeah. Little Johnny's in college now. Like, what?
Oh.
Gosh, that's when I met you.
I know, right? It's the funny thing when you're hanging out with your friends who are married and have kids already, and they're like just growing up, and like, yeah, it's those things, those flags of like, oh yeah, they're off to high school, off to college now. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, I was like, wow. But I appreciate that at least my friends haven't really. I mean, I'm sure they're all like, when are you gonna do it? But I've been with my partner for about, I know I'm not even gonna say how many years, because everybody's like, what? And you guys still are married? Because we're over the 3 to 5 year mark. But it was a conscientious choice, and neither one of us we're like regretting it. And I'm looking at some people just never get married, but it's something that we want to do. It's just not. I'm not going to pressure myself into do it, because I think some people jump ahead. Like, oh, you didn't know this person's financial situation before you jumped in, or you didn't know you were going to be paying his student loans back, or you didn't know that, you don't know where you guys want to live, or you don't know if you want to have children. And some people don't have those conversations after marriage, and it's like, wait a minute, you never lived together, so you don't know.
It's insane to me.
Yeah, you don't know how you're gonna even want to be with this person. Can you even handle being in a house with this person? Right? Can you live with them? Sometimes people just jump in, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I'm always just like, I don't want to say that. It sounds kind of, how you go and you test the car before you go out and you pull it out the lot.
But no, here's the thing. First of all, it's my opinion. Like, certainly, Nikkita, I hope you never feel pressure to like work at anybody else's pace. Like, who cares if it's 3, 5, 7, whatever years? It's like, you work at your own pace, you figure it out. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
But it's like you're saying, like, sometimes people get married too soon because they don't figure out these things, and they don't think about it, because our society doesn't attach those consequences and responsibilities to what a marriage is. Like, because I separate being in love with marriage. Marriage is like a very committed relationship, and it's or a step of a very committed relationship for certain pairs of people, right? But if you don't take the time, like you said, have you ever actually spent time living with this person, figuring out all these things? Like, do you guys want children? Is that an assumption, or do you guys decide that, like, is one or both of you in debt? Like, do you plan to buy a house? If you want a house,
Right.
like, where do you two want to live? And then also your careers. Like, all of these things really matter. And people, I think too many couples don't have those conversations, and they should.
Yeah. I remember it was years ago. I remember Whoopi Goldberg was talking, and she was saying how we get so caught up in the wedding, the planning, the planning of the wedding, and doing all these things. And then you love the person, but she's like, you sometimes it's after the plan, after the wedding, that you realize I loved you, but I don't think I really like you as a person. Like, I don't know, I don't really like you,
They're
and it
different
just,
things.
yeah, and it's just like we basically based our whole relationship on a party. I had more fun planning the party than the actual commitment behind that party. So, some people are like, oh, the wedding, the wedding, the wedding. I spent all this money on the wedding, but the wedding is symbolic of what the marriage is supposed to be. The marriage is the
Yes.
most important thing.
Yes.
It's not the ring and the size of the ring, it's what the ring represents.
Absolutely.
So I think that when we get past that's something different as well.
I think you've nailed it there, where especially in American capitalism, we've created an entire business of the wedding, not marriage, but like you said, the wedding. And I think too many people conflate a wedding with marriage, where they say like, I want to get married. What they're really saying is like,
Exactly.
I want the wedding. I want the ceremony, the event, the memory. But what we're talking about here is marriage, which is a totally different thing. It's not one event. It's like years together with someone, and things that you have to really consider and think about, and work with the other person. It's like you said too, there's a difference between loving someone and liking someone. You can be absolutely in love with someone, but you it could very well be the case that you and this person are just on, and I don't mean you, I mean the general, are not meant to be married, right? Because like you could be two people who love each other but make a terrible couple,
Mm-hmm.
which happens. um yeah. So does marriage still matter? uh I think marriage itself still matters to the people who want to get married,
I
but I
agree
think
with that.
I think weddings don't should not and don't matter as much anymore.
Yes. Yes. Plan for the marriage, not the wedding.
Yes, yes, weddings don't matter as much, and I think the pandemic really, if anything, uh, really scored that well, because again, people had to hold off on their weddings and people got married anyway, and but that just shows how, like, utterly, in my opinion, like, inconsequential it is to the marriage, in my opinion. But that's just me. I mean, I know some people that grow up their whole entire lives, they want and need that
Yeah,
wonderful ceremony
they've
and
been
memory.
planning for that party for all their lives. And I
Yeah,
was like, and I feel like some people are like, yes, I can. I know what dress I want to wear. I know what song I want to dance to. I know what food I want to eat. But I'm like, but what about the husband? What do you know? What are your plans
yeah,
for the marriage itself? What are you planning to sacrifice? Because marriage is give and take. What are you planning to give?
absolutely. Yeah,
And they say marriage is 50-50, but really marriage is 100 and 100. Do you really want someone to give
absolutely.
a half, excuse my language, but half-assed give? I'm only giving you half of me because you're not worth the whole thing. I mean, if
Yeah,
you're not complete as a person in yourself, how can you complete a union? If you're not a whole self, you're only bringing half of yourself to the table.
I
But
love the
that's
way
my
you frame that. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. It's not like you're ignoring the entire half of someone. It's like you get the whole package and you have to deal with it. It's not like you ignore their negatives. It's that you have to accept their negatives along with their positives.
Mhm.
So 100,
Exactly.
100. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. We're actually at 19 minutes now. So
All
this
right,
was,
we made time.
yeah, we made time. This was a great conversation, Nikita. I hope we get to speak again. And thank you for your time. I'll
All
stop
right.
the recording soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow, such an interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Nikkita and Ethan. Lots to unpack there, and I wonder what you all think. I don't know. That's it for us, folks. Catch us next week for a brand new episode with brand new contributors. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WannaCoffeePod. That's WannaCoffeePod. I'm your host, Kai, and let's wanna coffee next week. Cheers. Oh my God, orange is not my new black.